Let's just have a go at that fast double stroke roll section at 270. I think it's realistically going to be too fast. It's right on the limit. One hell of a warm-up. Welcome to this third practice diary, I think it is, as part of my Songs for Snare Drum project. I'm not going to do a long one today because it's nearly lunchtime and I've been teaching this morning. But I'm going to do half an hour or so of my practicing, and I thought, as before, I would talk through some of the concepts, some of the approaches, some of the things I'm working on, and share that process and share a few of my thoughts about practicing generally. So I'm about a month out, exactly a month out, from a recording session, a 2-day recording session in which I'm going to be recording 10 of these original march pieces that I've composed as part of this Arts Council project. And I'm at the stage now where I can play all of those 10 pieces quite nicely, to be honest with you. There are very few giving me much trouble now. And I'm trying to finalize the tempo for each of them and trying to just refine all of my technique and refine all of my knowledge and familiarity with the pieces themselves, so that when we go into the studio, it will be a very straightforward process. There are two of us. There's myself on the snare drum, and there is a chap doing a bass drum accompaniment, like a marching bass drum, except there's no actual marching involved. And we're not going to have a rehearsal or anything like that because of the logistics of it. So I need to make sure that for my part, I'm very comfortable with mine, and I need to get the tempos correct. When I write these pieces, I write with an idea in mind and I write with an effect in mind, and I work towards a particular tempo. And sometimes there's a bit of fluctuation up and down as to what is both physically possible and what actually sounds good as well. So I'm working on one of these pieces today called Main Battery, which is a really fun piece in 1816, which I think I've worked on before in one of these previous practice diaries. And it's very fast, as most of my compositions seem to be. And there's a section in it that has a lot of fast rolls. So what I'm actually doing here, I've got a study over here on my music stand on the right-hand side called Double Strokes 4 from the Snare Drum Virtuoso, which is the roll study I was just playing at the beginning. Now, in that study, as you just heard it there, I was 10 BPM shy of the target tempo. So I was playing it at dotted quarter note equals 70, in 12/8, and this is written at dotted quarter note equals 80, which is a very, very fast roll. But as you heard, there's lots of long rolls. It's a continuous roll. It's very reminiscent of three camps. In fact, it's very clearly inspired by three camps, but it's my own variation. And the goal is to force a degree of endurance in longer roll segments while maintaining the clarity of the accent patterns. And I'm using this one today as a sort of supplement to Main Battery, the piece, because they're very similar. The time signature is not quite the same, but the underlying meter feels very, very similar. And I'm using this as kind of a technical primer, something of a warm-up, and then I'm going back to the piece to keep working on that individual section. Funnily enough, though, it's not that fast roll section that is the problem. There's a section, I think it's the second section from bars 6 to 13, that is really quite tough. It's this low, quiet drag section. It's very intricate, lots of sort of polyrhythmic phrasing in there. So essentially what I'm doing in this section, in this practice session, is I'm working on three things. I'm working on that difficult drag section I just spoke about. I'm working on the fast roll section, and I'm using double strokes 4 as a sort of intermediary between the two, and I switch between them. It helps keep my focus, it helps keep me fresh, and plenty of studies have found that by working on various things in sequence, cycling around them in the same practice session, it can be very, very powerful, very productive. So I've got my metronome down here. First of all, I'm just going to have a run through the whole piece, main battery. It's currently at 8th note equals 225. The target tempo is 8th note equals 270, but that's very, very fast. So I suspect that is going to come down somewhat. And that's part of my fact finding today as well. So I'm going to have a run through at 225 and just listen to how it sounds, first of all. See how it feels now that I'm nicely warmed up, and then we can take it from there. Had the wrong time signature in my head, so that counting completely threw me. Let's try that again. Something like that. It was quite sloppy. There were a fair few mistakes in there, but that's kind of the point. I'm looking for those pieces, looking for those sections, looking for those bars that are tripping me up. Because as you can hear, on the whole, I'm performing it pretty well. I know it pretty well. It feels good. Even that fast roll section towards the end there. There's a lovely section. The third section, these fast but quiet rolls. It's at a mezzo piano dynamic. Considering how tricky that can be to play fast rolls quietly, that section's actually feeling really nice. It's one of the most fun to play. It's this second section with those drags. You probably heard it there. And it's not the drags themselves. The drags themselves are actually relatively straightforward. It's these stops, these flammed accents in the middle of them. And they're really important because they drive the main musical phrase. So they have to be really well articulated. So what I'm going to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's an 8-bar section. This is one of my favorite practice approaches. I like to isolate the difficult section and loop it. And I do it in small numbers of loops, but gradually increase the tempo, not for the sake of the tempo, but to maintain my focus. If I just say, well, I'm going to do 100 repetitions, your mind straight away goes, oh God, 100 repetitions. And then you start to get bored and the focus starts to waver. Whereas if I say I'm just going to do 8, I can stay really, really focused for those 8 repetitions, nudge the tempo up, do it again, nudge the tempo up, do it again. If I make a mistake, nudge it back down again. And play a little game with myself. And that all just serves to keep me focused. So that's an 8-bar section. So if I do, let's just do it 4 times through. So I'm going to set the bar counter on my metronome to 33. That will give me a 1-bar count in, and then 4 times through the overall section. Now for this, I'm going to do it really slowly because I'm aiming for accuracy. I'm aiming for control. It's not speed. As you just heard, the speed is not really an issue once you can move the sticks fast enough. It actually more often comes down to your familiarity with the patterns, your familiarity with the sticking and the figures, that you can actually reproduce them without having to consciously think about it. I think some of these, you'll hear it, but some of these flammed accents that occur across the bar line in awkward places, they're still catching me out. They're still a little bit unexpected for me. So if they're unexpected, I'm not going to perform them fluidly. You can see the bits I'm more comfortable with because I don't really need to pay attention to the score. I can watch my hands, or I can, look out the window or something. Whereas when I'm a little bit less familiar with it, I really have to pay attention. So let's go 4 times through. So it feels nice. My main focus there when I'm playing that, as I've suggested, is in increasing my familiarity with where those awkward syncopated accents come. You can hear them in there. They break up the flow, but they actually make the overall musical idea from that segment. So it's really important that I know where they are and I know where they come. I'm just going to jump the tempo now. I'm going to jump back up to 225, which is how I had it where I ran through just a moment ago. And just try and get a sense for how that feels at 225. So I'm listening both for how it sounds at that tempo and also how it feels to me in terms of its playability. It should be well playable because it's well within the tempo range that I've written it in, but it's how much further I want to push it. I'd like to really aim for at least 250. So we'll see how we go. So this is at 225 this time. That was twice through. That was feeling much more comfortable. Obviously, this is not a magic bullet. This is all about familiarity. This is all about to increase my ability to anticipate when those accents are coming, when those pauses are coming, and of course the strange crescendos that are in there in odd places as well. So I'm going to pick that up again. Let's try that at 250 this time. This will be quite fast, but let's see how it feels. Yes, it's the second half of that phrase from bar 10. Let me try that again. It's really awkward. So this is I've written it in 1816. It's essentially in I guess you can think of it as, I guess you could think of it in 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But each eighth note gets a triplet. But essentially it's 2 groups of 9. And each group of 9 is 3 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's the main underlying meter that we're working in here. And some of the accent figures, some of the crescendos within that come in unexpected places. They're not completely polyrhythmic, but they are suggestive of a polyrhythmic phrase that rolls over the bar line a little bit. And if you're not anticipating it and if you're not ready for it, it just it's throwing me off. Let me try that again. I'll stick at 250. So it's definitely there. It's definitely doable at 250. The original 270, that part's probably playable, but the rolls aren't. So I'm actually going to try the whole piece through now, and I'm going to try it at 250 this time, which is going to be a push. But with a month to go until I'm due to perform this, I need to push a little bit. Because as I say, it's not necessarily the speed that's an issue. That's what those technical studies are for. It's more the familiarity with the whole piece. little bit sloppy at the end. Ironically, the part I was practicing came off really nicely, and then some of these sections on the second page were a little bit awkward. So 250 there, realistically, is probably the limit of what I'm going to achieve insofar as those double strokes are concerned. Let's just have a go at, I won't do the whole piece. Let's just have a go at that fast double roll section, double stroke roll section at 270. I think it's realistically going to be too fast. right on the limit. The question needs to be, though, not is it physically playable, but does the piece need it? That's what I'm wrestling with at the moment, because I'm sure with another month, I could probably work that up so that I can play it comfortably at 270. The question is that a good use of my time? And is that actually serving what the piece needs? Because to a listener, there's probably not too much difference between 250, 260, and 270. But it might just scrunch up all of the musical ideas and take away the sort of the groove or the drive. So for now, I'm going to keep it down towards the lower end, towards 250. And I'm actually going to go and get some lunch now. So I thought I'd just give you a quick insight into what I'm working on at the moment and how I approach this. I think it's interesting, or I hope you find it interesting, the fact that as I'm approaching the actual act of performance and recording, I'm moving away from technical practice and more towards familiarization with a piece, rounding off the musical performance, because the priority changes. Ultimately, on the day, it's not so much going to matter how perfectly I played the drag on the third beat of the 14th bar. Is the overall performance good? Does it sound the way I intended it to sound when I composed the thing? So these are the questions that I'm turning my attention to now. But as you saw from the beginning of the session when I had this double stroke study, I still need to address those technical concerns as well, but it all just changes in a slightly different direction. I know how to play the piece. It's now making sure it's ready for performance and that all of those aspects like the tempo, like the accents, like the dynamic variation, they're coming across as a musical performance rather than just a technical exercise. Anyway, I'll crack on. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.